One of the most challenging things as a business owner is trying to stay on top of all of the reporting requirements and new regulations that we're required to deal with every single year. Of course, 2024 was no different. This year, we are introduced to the Corporate Transparency Act and the new beneficial ownership information reporting that's required. During this video, we're going to start off by showing you how to fill out your BOI form and then how you can submit it online. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in today. Now, the fact that you're watching this video, there's pretty much only 3 different reasons why you would be doing so. The first one is you have a brand new entity you created this year after January 1st, and you know you only have 90 days from the date of the creation of that entity to report the beneficial ownership information. The second one is you actually have an entity that existed before this, and while you still have additional time, you have until January 1st, 2025, you know you're gonna have to file the same information. Now, the third one, of course, could be that you just love this channel, like supporting us by watching all our content and, of course, commenting below. But if it's not that and you haven't yet, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And if you do have questions through all this, put a comment down below and I'll be sure to answer as quick as I possibly can. So before we jump into the form, just a quick kind of overview of exactly what we're talking about here with the Corporate Transparency Act and the Beneficial Ownership Information Reporting. That's definitely a mouthful there.
Try to say that 5 times fast.
The intent of this form, any entity that is basically not a sole proprietor or a partnership that is not an LLC. So they're looking for limited liability corporations, S Corp, C Corp, and nonprofit entities, as well as foreign entities, are now required to file this information. And what they're talking about, what is beneficial ownership? There are different ways that this is calculated. It's basically talking about substantial control over the company itself or any person who owns more than 25% interest in the business. To file this information, there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. All of them are basically going to start by going to the BOI e-filing website. You have the option that you can actually download a fillable PDF, fill everything into that, attach the documents you need, and then upload it to do your submission, or you can do an online web form and process everything right there. On purpose, during this video, I'm going to focus specifically on the downloadable PDF form. I'm doing this because it gives me the ability to actually take a look at the form, everything I'm going to need to collect, start filling everything in, and then I have the choice whether I want to actually upload and submit that PDF, or I could then go to the web portal and start typing everything in. Now, I got to say, this is probably one of the absolute best government PDF fillable forms I've ever seen in my entire life. No joke.
Only got one ride.
They did a very, very good job on this thing. It's set up with full clickable tabs to go into different areas of everything. There may be a little bit of glitches and such there. The buttons are clickable to get through the instructions. Once you fill everything in, you validate it, you can finalize it, you save it, print it. We'll go through all of those details here shortly. But what really was amazing to me is they have built into this thing conditional logic that based on the type of filing you're doing, they will eliminate different fields that you won't have to fill in at all. So if we start off at the very beginning here, the different filing types that you'd be looking at. You've got your initial report, which basically everybody's going to be starting off with an initial report. The big question is, when was your entity created and how long do you have until you have to file that? When you click the initial report, it's going to block off different information that won't even be necessary. And you'll see as we go through some of the stuff you can't access. In the future, after you've done your initial report, if you ever have to update information or correct information or provide that you're a newly exempt entity, you would need to fill this form in again and you would click one of those other boxes. That's when you would actually start to see these first fields available. So you scroll down to the next part, which is the reporting company information. So the very first question on here is actually an optional one. It's the ability to request a FinCEN identification number. If you're going to be helping a lot of other people fill these in and have to put your information on the forms over and over again, you can make the request for that FinCEN ID number, and they will be able to use that instead of filling in your personal information every single time. The first bit of information we actually have to start typing in is our legal company name. In my scenario, my actual corporate name was Parkway.Business Inc. while I also had the DBA, of course, Parkway Business Solutions. Now in the form, one of the things I learned is whatever you type into the top field, number 5, it's going to automatically populate into 6. So if you need to do a DBA as well, you're going to hit the plus sign to expand it and give you another column where the DBA name would go there. If you have multiple DBAs, you need to list all of them for this specific entity on this page. The next area is going to ask you for your specific, some form of a tax identification, the type you want to use. So it's either going to be your EIN, it could be your social security number, an ITIN, or if you're a foreign entity, you'll end up providing, it's a 25 character or number, you'd provide that instead. I'm using an EIN, of course, for myself. And when you type the information in, you're not going to use any punctuation. It'll be just the numbers, or for the foreign one, the numbers and characters without any punctuation, and it will recognize the formatting. If you have improper formatting, it will warn you, turn the field red, which is great, so you know that there's a challenge. Again, if it's foreign industry, you'll see there's certain fields I'm not having to deal with since I'm in a US-based company. Next area, of course, is your jurisdiction. So these are all drop downs. They do a phenomenal job with this. You can type in to get towards it or just drop it down and select. We're in the United States, of course. I need to tell them what state my business was formed in. Again, great setup where you've got everything listed, but I can also start to type in to do my selection. If it was not one of the states and it was chosen to be tribal, you would fill that information in again instead. So I'm trying to draw attention to the fact that while there's a lot of fields on here, there's a lot of stuff you probably won't ever even touch. Now, the next section on this form is asking for the current US address of the business itself. So if you have a brick and mortar, they're talking about that specific physical address. If you happen to be a remote worker or you work from home, you would put a home address down at that point. It's the actual registered location of your company. Again, drop-down fields make this very quick and easy to fill out. Now, on our next page, we're going to deal with the company applicant information. This is the person who actually helped create the new entity, filing the paperwork with the Secretary of State, basically filling all that information in. So if you used a service provider, kind of like a CorpNet or a LegalZoom, you'll want to ask them specifically for their FinCEN ID number so they can you can populate it into this field here. That makes it to where you don't have to provide any additional information, really helps expedite the process. Now, if you're like me and you're the one who provided them all of the details they needed to create that corporation, then you also need to be on there as a company applicant. So if you have more than one company applicant in that scenario, you have a plus icon here where you can click it and it will create a secondary page to fill in all of those details. Now, I should also mention at the very top, until we said we had a secondary company applicant, if your corporation was in existence before January 1st of 2024, you're not actually required to file information on a company applicant. In that scenario, so if it existed beforehand, you'd click the checkbox up top here and you'd be able to skip through all of this stuff. So the information it's going to be asking for, I'm filling this in as if it was me. Of course, it's last name, your first name, your basic, your date of birth on there. And then it's also going to be asking you for your current address. Now, for the company applicant, if you're an individual that is just helping out for one time, you would basically use your residential address for this. They're looking to they want to know where to go knock on the door if somebody ends up down the road trying to launder money, trying to do something weird. They want to go find somebody.
Money laundering, racketeering fraud.
Now, if you set up a business and you're offering this as a service, you can actually use a business address then instead. That's what I've done here. The next part of it is for that person, you need to provide some kind of ID. And they give you a couple different options. Driver's license, of course, a basic state ID or local or tribe ID, US passport, or if you're a foreign entity and you don't have any of those, you could use a foreign passport. When you choose whichever it is, you'll then provide the identifying number for it, use the drop down to choose the country and the state, or of course the local tribe, whatever is necessary. You then need to attach a copy of that ID. The supported file types are basically a JPEG, a PNG, and a PDF, and they must be smaller than 4 megabytes. Another thing that I found is if you're going to be using this same image in this portion and the later one, the beneficial ownership, you have to have the file with 2 different names. If you try to upload the same file with the same name, it will give you an error. Just quickly attach it, and then you're able to move on to the next field. The third area now is the beneficial ownership information. And again, at the top, we have these plus and minuses here. So depending on how many beneficial owners you actually have, you'll create additional pages to fill that information in. If you are an owner of multiple entities and you've already created a FinCEN ID number and received it, you can actually put the information in as the FinCEN ID and not have to continue to fill out the other portions of the form itself. We can see that since I've already been filling stuff in, that's not available. Additionally, there are certain exemptions that we'll cover in a later section. One of them being a parent guardian instead of a child if the child meets the exemption. If that's so, you would check the box, and the parent guardian would be the one to fill this information in, at least until they come of age. If you're an exempt entity, you would then check this box and it gets rid of all of this. Again, there's about 23 different exemptions possible for different businesses. The short version of this is if you are part of a business entity or the type of business you do already has you reporting this type of information to some other government entity. For example, if you're into stocks, into securities, then you're going to be dealing with the SEC. If you're working with insurance, you'd be talking to the insurance commissioner. If you're filing this information to different agencies of that nature, you may have an exemption possible for you. For most small businesses, you're not going to have an exemption. You would need to fill this out. There are also specific exemptions for nonprofits and certain ways that can be handled. For me on this situation, I'm just going to continue to fill this out. And since I'm the sole owner of my new corporation, all I have to do is fill in my own personal information on this. So same as before, last name, first name, your date of birth, home address, everything else. And then you're going to file again, choose your ID type. I did the exact same ID, and then I did the attachment. You can see at the bottom, I put copy at the end to make it to where it allowed me to do both of them. Once this is done, you've literally filled in your entire form. You're going to go all the way back to the very, very top here. So now we'll quickly click validate. It's going to go through, check, woohoo, got no errors. We're ready to finalize the form. Click OK, and then you're going to click finalize. So what that does, as it says, the form has been finalized and cannot be altered unless you click on edit the report, open it back up, and choose to do so from there. Now, before you can actually go to submit this form, you actually have to do a save as well. So once the ready to file button pops up, you're basically good to go. So now here's the cool thing. You got a couple ways you can actually go about this. If you click ready to file, you can click the button. It's going to ask you if you want to go back to that website we were already on. So after you type in your basic information, you're going to either drag and drop or choose the file that you want to upload. Click it, click open, and choose to populate it. Now we can see here, there are some naming conventions which are pretty important. I normally like to put this in with the date and everything else, so I'm going to actually have to rename this and then put it back in without any special characters. Okay, so I took out the special characters. It now looks good there. Click I agree. And the last thing, compliance-wise, it's basically telling you, look, if you're purposely putting bad information, it's not going to turn out good for you. Don't do it. I'm going to click on the I am a human, and it's going to ask us to click on things that are different than the others.
One of these things, it's not like the others, it's you!
Click on that, go next. If you don't do it fast enough, it's going to think you're a computer still. Set it up, and now I can go and submit to the BOIR. Gives us a submission tracking number. That's probably supposed to be private, but we'll find out. And yay, the system experienced a momentary technical issue and could not process your submission. Please try again. So I just tried to do it a second time off camera, and I'm still getting the same exact issue. So I guess what we'll do is let's go ahead and go back. We'll say the submission page, and we might as well go over to prepare and submit the BOIR directly from here. As you can imagine, what this is going to require is just like with the PDF form, we're going to fill all of this information right back in. Date prepared is auto-filled in. You're supposed to read through all of this information. Click next. I'm going to make my request. And I'm going to basically go step by step through all of this just like we once did. So to kind of show you how all the different information correlates, I'm going to scroll down with the PDF. You'll see exactly how each piece is, working the same. Go through, type it all in.
A few short moments.
Okay, so we got it all filled in. We'll maximize. We'll click on next. So last little bit here, like we did before.
By typing on a weird little keyboard.
Okay, so I was able to go through, fill out all the information, click the button to do the submission, clicked on the plant, not the bears, made sure I was a human kind of thing. And the next thing that popped up after just a quick moment was my submission confirmation. So this information, it's really important you go and you're going to download this transcript. Keep a copy of it for yourself. And then from there, the nice thing is you really won't have to come back and do this again unless there is some kind of a change in the information. So as an example, if you had some of substantial control change, you fired a CEO, CFO, something of that nature, and hired a new one, you would need to update this information. If the owner, one of the owners that has 25% or more, if their home address changed, you would need to update the information. Or if maybe new owners came in and the split, anybody that is above 25% would need to be reported. If that meant somebody dropped below it, they could actually come off as well. Hopefully this video helped you understand what type of information you're going to need and truly how easy it is to fill it, either the PDF form or going straight to the online form and fill that information out there. Now, for those of you out there that have much more complicated requirements, I wanted to share with you, I've been putting together a pretty big presentation. It's a slide deck that's got basically 100 slides that's going to walk through all the information, talks about who's responsible for doing this. I walk through all of the different exemptions, all 23 of them, give you some concepts of what, each of the terms mean. I can tell you, it took some time to put this thing together. Now, I understand this is definitely one of those kind of topics that only certain people are going to be interested in. So if you are one of those, be sure to let me know in the comments, and it's going to motivate me to actually create that video, get it out onto the channel. Now, most important, I want to thank you again for taking the time to watch the video. I hope it was helpful to you. And as always, here's wishing you all a very successful week.